Restoring Men in History. To understand the woke, you have to understand the Culture of Narcissism by Mark Judge, WashingtonExaminer.com. Here he talks, the nature of the left in 2022 is rooted more in psychology than political science. Now this, you can see it, right? People talk about their feelings, moved towards psychology and self over looking to God and looking up or looking to their friends, looking in self, isolated, being in a solid group. Specifically, liberalism, he says, is suffering from narcissism. To understand how, it's essential to grasp the true meaning of narcissism. In its clinical definition, narcissism is not self-love, it's the opposite. So let's go into this other article about narcissism real quick and then go back to the other piece. emedicinehealth.com, 9 traits of a narcissist. Let's just read a few of them. We don't want to get caught up in too many. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, or narcissism, is a personality disorder characterized by a sense of grandiosity. This piece says the need for attention. So factor in attention here when we later get back to the other article, and we'll make sense on attention. If you want attention and admiration, how could you do that? We can do that by thinking you're something you're not, right? Superficial interpersonal relationships. Now we see a lot of that today, right? A lack of empathy, symptoms of exaggerated sense of self-importance, feeling superior to others. Feelings are often accompanied by fantasies of unlimited success, brilliance, power, beauty, or love. 2, excessive need for admiration. Must be the center of attention, often monopolize conversations. Patients feel slighted, mistreated, depleted, enraged when ignored. So you've seen that play out, right? 3, superficial and exploitive relationships. In America, you've seen our things on friendships. Friendship is down, it's in decline for men and women too. So superficial and exploitive relationships are based on surface attributes and not the unique qualities of others. We won't go into this too much. People are only valued to the extent, this is a good one, that they are viewed as beneficial. So Aristotle will call that what? The transactional friendship, which is the worst of the 3. So we won't go into that. Lack of empathy, number 4, severely limited or totally lacking ability to care about the emotional needs or experiences of others. So a true friend would what? Is concerned about others. A true leader is concerned about his people, right? Identity disturbance, sense of self is highly superficial. So extremely rigid and often fragile. We've seen that, right? I've seen it. No sense of self. Self-stability depends on maintaining the view that one is exceptional. Grandiose sense of self is easily threatened. Patients retreat from or deny realities that challenge grandiosity. Difficulty with attachment and dependency. Relies on feedback from the environment. So you want to be getting from the internal, right? Or a good exterior, right? They do it from the environment. Relationships only exist to shore up positive self-image. Interactions are superficial. A lot of superficiality today too, right, in America. So this is right on the money. 7, chronic feelings of emptiness, boredom. Have you heard people say they're bored? They don't have mission purpose. When attention and praise are not available, patients feel empty, bored, depressed. So they feel empty, bored, and depressed. Vulnerability to life transitions, difficulty maintaining reality-based, here it is, professional and personal goals over time, compromises required by school jobs, and relationships may feel unbearable. We've seen that, right? Where people get so upset about something being a law. Okay, that's good on that. Also may have a significant risk factor for suicide. Let's go back to the piece that I really want to talk to. That sets up narcissism. And let's go back to what he says. To understand how, is it essential to grasp the true meaning of narcissism? We just read theirs. In the clinical definition, narcissism is not self-love. It's the opposite. Think about that. Very important. The narcissist isn't full of ego. Rather, he has no real sense of self. And you've seen that, right? By the way, if you think we need a better understanding of history and these kinds of issues, and we need to build better, stronger men and women, please subscribe and hit the like button. We would appreciate that. Comments help too. Thank you. Now back. He goes on. Where the self would be is emptiness, which results in a mad effort to fill the psyche with meaning. No sense of self, seen it over and over and over. This is true. And there's not a lot of confidence with that. If you don't have a sense of self, how would you have confidence? And confidence, by the way, let's distinguish, is not arrogance. You don't have to be arrogant, just confident. Confidence is different. We'll go into that sometime, perhaps. There's a confidence when you know who you are and what you stand for in life and what the truth is, right? Think of all the causes some people attach to, and overnight they can change it and flip to the next cause and the next cause and the next cause with no depth of meaning, even though it may not be true, but they attach to it. Perhaps it's for what? Attention, right? Because if you're in the end thing, whatever the next thing is, whether it's this or that or some country or some virus or this or that, you're getting attention for liking what all the conformists are, right? No sense of self. And if you don't have a sense of self, you're also open for what? Distraction, right? And destruction. You can be distracted easily to the next thing, or you can be open to destruction. You need to know what your values are, what you stand for, how to act as a man, right? As a man, you need to know this. You need to know what virtue is. Do you even care about virtue if you're in that state? You're struggling with self, it's hard to be concerned about other things, right? If you're looking in. And then you get that, what? Emptiness has to be filled. And people will fill it with something, right? So that would explain this rush to crazy ideas and madness, right? It's madness, right? When something's completely untrue and it's self-evident, but you believe it can be true and it's illogical, and you go into a crazy idea. This would explain that, right? The culture of narcissism and the attention that you might get from that. Men are men, we know that, it's self-evident. Women are women, you can't change that, right? So if you're mad and believe you can, you're jumping into this woke ideology. And he's explaining it with the culture of narcissism. Men are men. We know that boys have to become men. Girls become women. That's what they become. Thinking, you want to be able to think. Just because you feel something doesn't make it so. Some people have turned over thinking that it will give them attention or meaning to believe they can be something they can't be. And they get attention. If they get attention, they may confuse that with meaning, right? So going on, he says, lacking a stable and confident sense of identity, the narcissist hunts for meaning where? In therapy, self-help, sex, radical politics. Well, we've seen all of those, right? Seen people jumping in, thinking they can be something that they can't be. And it's self-evident, and it's an untruth. Now, none of these, he goes on, can give meaning to empty lives. So look at the expert culture we're in now, the psychology over God. God, by the way, if you're looking up at God, you're out of self, right? If you're looking to friends, you're out of self. If you're looking to help a friend, you're out of self. If you're listening to a friend and you have a true friendship with a friend and you're trying to help them with a problem, you're out of self. You're focused on listening to your friend. You're listening to their problems and you're seeing what they need, whether they just need you to listen or whether they need you to recommend options. So be about others, not yourself. That gets you out of self. Psychology, you're always looking and analyzing of yourself instead of looking to help others, right? So in his seminal 1979 work, The Culture of Narcissism, great book, by the way. Maybe we'll go through the whole book because the whole book's very good and true to today. He wrote it in 79, it says here. But let's stay in the article, but the book is really good. The brilliant social scientist, he goes on to say, Christopher Lasch, argued that the human personality, its psychology itself, had changed over the course of the latter 20th century. Americans had transformed from strong and well-adjusted people to those evincing a minimal self. And you've seen that, right? People really don't know whom they are, right? A personality that is weak and dependent on what? Government, corporations, radical politics, sex, and bureaucracies. And the bureaucracies are huge, right? They're huge now. For what? For a sense of meaning. So that's true, right? People have become more and more dependent on the big federal government too, not the state and local. And the federal government's doing more and more in the administrative state. And as the administrative state does more, you may think they may think they get a minimal sense of self from a title or a position or a government position or a corporation. But again, true self comes from here, right? Not your job, not your title, not your corporation, not where you work. How do you get strength? By overcoming obstacles, not by turning it over to the administrative state. How does the city or local government get stronger? How do the leaders of that community get stronger? By taking action and handling the problems, not turning them over to the federal government. But we don't want to go too much into that, but that is the problem when you remove yourself from the Constitution of federalism. By making decisions, each local rep and each individual in a family, if the family has control of their life and decisions, that family can get stronger and they can learn and grow from mistakes, right? We all can grow and learn. A strong individual will say, all right, I messed up, but I'm going to fix it. I'm going to take care of it, right? That's a strong individual. Anybody can make a mistake. Who will rise up and fix it? So we learn, we go on, we get stronger. So if you're outsourcing to the experts and letting them make all the decisions, what does that give you? Well, it allows you to get out of the decision process, and then you can say, oh, well, I was just listening to the experts. If it's the in crowd, you can get attention from it and say, well, and if it's a mistake, you can say, well, that was their fault, right? So you get out of accountability from it. The more you turn over to bureaucracy, the weaker in theory the individual gets, he's saying, right? And that's true. The more the administrative state, the more decisions the government makes, the more you listen to and just accept what the media says. You've got to read, think through things, analyze it, and then make your own decision from the information facts. Cities and states have to do the same. Let's don't go into federalism in the Constitution here. A central idea in Lash's analysis, and something that is key to understanding the new woke generation, he goes on to say, is how infants develop. Citing Sigmund Freud, Lash argued that to an infant, interactions with the world result in feelings of either omnipotence or what? Helplessness. In their fantasy world, a toddler is either king of the world, demanding their needs get met right away, and this is important for politics today, or is totally helpless and dependent upon parents for survival. It represents two extremes that need to be evened out. To do so, it is vital that the parents, community, and what Lash calls transitional objects, including toys, games, siblings, and pets, introduce what to the child? Limits, because children need limits, right? They need direction, not confusion, especially, well, both, but boys and girls need direction, not confusion. So not giving in to the child what he feels like doing, not telling the boy he might be something else when you know he's got to become a man. He can't be certain things. Men are men, women are women, boys become men. So limits on when you go out. These rules and limits that parents set are important. They define the boundaries, and children need boundaries. You're protecting and guiding them, and right, children need guidance, where they need to be, what time, what they need to do. They need to grow by your direction, not you adapting to their feelings always. Now, I'm not saying you don't listen, but when they start talking crazy and things that are not true, they need rules and direction, not confusion from the parents. And that will give them what? Security, right? So boys need direction, not confusion. You don't just go along with what they feel at the moment. My friend Brian was talking about when he was a boy watching Superman or something, and his mom said to him, now, you can't fly off the building, right, Brian? So you wouldn't allow a child to believe he could fly off a building or that he could be a superhero. So you should be encouraging and foster that boys become men, right? And not any of the other crazy. So You got to set limits, toughens them up. Father must discipline, set rules. They need guidance. We know that. So he goes on. These objects shrink the scale of fantasies, introduce reality, and allow a healthy transition into adulthood, right? So for boys, you become men. In the latter 20th century, the raising of the child went to television, the helping professions, schools, and bureaucracy. So that's not good, right? It went away from the parents to, what's he saying here? It went away from the parents to television, professions, schools, bureaucracies. Not good. Lash expert George, I don't know the pronunciation, Scialabba, once summarized the process this way: formerly the presence of potent but fallible individuals, economically self-sufficient, with final legal and moral authority over the children's upbringing, provided one kind of template for the growing child's psychic development. As fathers and increasingly mothers became employees, with the family's economic survival dependent upon remote, abstract corporate authorities, and as caretaking parents were increasingly supervised or replaced by educational, medical, and social welfare bureaucracies, the template changed, right? So you got the expert instead of the parent. You got the bureaucrat instead of the parent. Not good, right? And by the way, who and for what reason would want the power to transfer from parents to bureaucracies, administrators, schools, TV, and all this? Who would benefit from that? Who would gain power from that? The state, right? The state, not the state you live in, the federal government, the big state, the state. So there's certain people that still believe right today, they say it all the time, you hear it in the news, that they believe they know what's better for your children than you know. So getting the mom in the workforce was good for her. Was it great for all of the children? Not really. Not for many of the children, right? Children now got the mom not at home. They went to other places, and then when the mom came home, she was tired. Not watching them. Who does that benefit? TV, video games, the phone, technology. So it was all of these things that your child is looking at constantly. Entertainment, Hollywood, all these influences, right? Once you were on a farm, the man was there, the woman was there, you had that family. So when you take the mom out of the home, what happens? They don't see the crazy, and you don't get as much direction from the mom. You get it from over here instead of the mom, instead of the dad. And when the dad's out busy and tired, the mom's busy and tired. But taking the mom and dad out of it's good for what? Power and control. And who wants to do that? Now, we talked a little bit about what happens when you take parents out in the TR reading, so we won't go back through it, but you take you end up with an uninvolved father for boys, and many more go to prison, and they have many more life problems. And the same with girls. If you take their father out, they have issues and problems. So you want to have involved parents instead of bureaucrats and administrative state and all of this, and technologists and these people raising your children, right? Experts, children detached in crisis. Okay, the child now has no human-sized authority figures in the immediate environment against which to measure itself, and so to reduce its fantasies to human scale. So if you're not seeing real humans, if you're just out here on TV and everything can be a fantasy, right? You need that direct man, father, that direct mother right there, and you'll get reality, not fantasy, if it's a man, right? You'll get direction, not confusion. This TV and all this can confuse you, especially look at all that's going on with the schools and everything else. It's confusion, not direction. It continues to alternate between fantasies of omnipotence and helplessness. This makes acceptance of limits and death more difficult, which in turn makes commitment and perseverance of any kind. Now, perseverance is important to men. Of any kind, civic, artistic, sexual, parental, more difficult. So let's focus on this a second, which makes commitment and perseverance of any kind, civic, artistic, sexual, parental, more difficult. That's not good for society, right? And we've seen that, right? People are less committed to organizations. They don't get together in men's groups anymore. They don't have friends anymore. Churches are down, clubs are down, scouts are down, marriage is down, commitments is down. And we know what brings happiness. We won't go into that, the pursuit of happiness or Aristotle's happiness, but friendship of virtue provides a great happiness. So the more disengaged, isolated, lonely you are is not good if you can't. Communication. If you're just transactional, and we go back to that other article on narcissism, and you can't get back to somebody because you don't think they can help you anymore, that's a transactional relationship. It's not that deep, fulfilling relationship like I have with some of my male friends, right? So Brian, John, and I, it's more than transactional. Not a great way to build friends, Dave Sussman, but a good way to stay isolated and in your head, right? So you don't want to be isolated from friends and get in your head listening to all this. So commitment and perseverance, it's down. And you can see that. You can see that commitment, even getting back to people, texting back, answering back, just falling out, commitment to groups, commitment to organizations, church, it's all down. And that's not really great for the individual, right? Because what's happiness? Well, a lot of it is your interactions. We're social animals, right? Creatures, humans. So we need that interaction. Many men don't have friends. We've gone into that. That's in the friends one. Communication. If you're in transactional, your communication is going to be different than if you want a deep, fulfilling relationships with men or your wife. Going on, he says the result is narcissism. Lash described it this way: having surrendered most of his technical skills to the corporation, the contemporary American, and this is big, can no longer provide for his material needs. As the family loses not only its productive functions, that's sad, right? But many of its reproductive functions as well. Men and women no longer manage even to raise their children without the help of the experts, certified experts. Older traditions of self-help has eroded everyday competence. Now, as a man, you want to be competent. So we'll talk about this in a second. And one area after another, right? Men aren't competent looking you in the eye, getting back to you, closing deals with the same level of urgency. I mean, we can go through that. Dependent upon the state, the corporation, and other bureaucracies. In one area after another, and has made the individual dependent upon the state, the corporation, and other bureaucracies. So competence is interesting because as a man, you want to be competent. You want to be able to accomplish and do things and just be good at being a man and being competent. And all of these things, right? The administrative state and all these make you less competent, right? And you want to be competent as a person, as a woman, as a man. You want to be good at being a man. You want to do your own thinking too, and not be dependent to let the state do your thinking for sure, or the media do your thinking, or the bureaucracy to do your thinking. You want to read, think through, and determine your course of action and be competent. You don't want someone to tell you, the media to tell you what to think, or an administrative agency. Even some people today, you can tell they don't want to think now. They want to be told what to do, right? So if you don't have a sense of self, you may want to be told what to do if you don't have a sense of self. And then, right, if you go to the experts, you can defer the responsibility. Well, the experts said it, so it's okay. I didn't really decide. The experts said it. No accountability, no responsibility. They told me to do it. The experts told me. I did my part. Going on, when one observes the behavior of the new modern woke, Lash's words are stunningly true. The college kids literally screaming like toddlers when faced with a speaker they don't like. True, right? We've seen that over and over the last few years, for a long time now. The transgender people asserting that their truth is all that matters. Their truth is all that matters. The You Go Girl amateur psychologist helping mentally wobbly people to demand respect, even if they haven't earned it. We've seen that. This is the world the culture of narcissism predicted. These aren't the old communists with their dialectical materialism and pseudoscience about the tectonic plates of evolutionary social change. These are babies with no secure sense of self, throwing tantrums. Well, we've seen the tantrums for a long time now, right? That the whatever you want to call it, the rioters throwing tantrums, all that, the college protesters, they're like children throwing tantrums, right? So he goes on a comment on a YouTube video I recently came across is very telling. He says the clip shows some colorful teenage dancers in a 1980s club from a long time ago. Being in college at the time, he was actually scanning the YouTube looking for his old self. Yet what caught his eye was a comment below the video, a remark left by what he assumes was a younger viewer. They all look so confident, it says. Now that's interesting, right? Because if you have no sense of self, you can't have a lot of confidence, right? If you don't know who you are, you can't have a lot of confidence. If you're confused about who you are, you certainly can't have confidence. You don't even know who you are. The woke are not egotistical, assertive activists, he says, going on. They are those without a self, without history, and without confidence. More than 40 years after the publication of The Culture of Narcissism, Lash's screaming tyke is running the culture. Well, good points and true, right? We see a lot of tantrums today. And we'll come back to this, I think, because the book's really good. And this is true about people, right? They don't really care about history. And I think the book goes into that. They don't care about, and I've said this before, they don't really care about what came before them. They don't have that interest in history and the men that preceded them. We want to have an interest in the men that preceded us, George Washington, Churchill, and all these great men, and build upon them and learn from them and take their wisdom and know what came before us. So we avoid some of their mistakes and know that there's a past and a future, that there's posterity, that there's future and past, that it's not just about us. But some people really do only think it's about this moment today. And their beginning from when they were born. I used to say this in a group. Their life starts when they were born, not when George Washington, not when the Constitution was written, not when the Declaration of Independence was written, not when the Magna Carta was written. It starts with them today. So they don't care about history. They don't want to know it. And the confidence is interesting. Strength, right? Hard to be strong when you don't know whom you are, right? Hard to have confidence when you have no sense of self. Building better, stronger men for better lives. If you want to do that, hit the subscribe button and like. Thank you.